March is known for the end of winter and the arrival of springtime, a season of warmth and renewal. For history buffs, it's also known for the date Julius Caesar met his last. But don't let time pass you by like a bunch of old Romans. Hello again, SA here. And I'm just here to remind you to get your copy of my book series, Glitch. It's available on Barnes & Noble and other fine bookstores, as well as Amazon. The links are down below in the description. And while you're out enjoying the spring weather, you can also indulge in my story of a kidnapped teen model and a reluctant jewel thief who are on the run from the law. Yeah, you don't have to guess. I still have other books coming down the pike. So as long as I don't run into any difficulties. You'll be seeing those books too, I'm sure. Now let's get back to the video. Hello again, SA here. Anyone who is familiar with a mystery knows that it's never really cut and dry. Indeed, anyone who does crossword puzzles knows that you don't know where it'll lead you to. And people who dealt with even more complex conundrums can testify to that as well. I mean, ever read Sherlock Holmes? Yeah. Indeed, murder mysteries are probably the most fascinating and usually mind-boggling mysteries of all. And not just referring to fictional ones either. Because to this day, people still don't know who killed John Fitzgerald Kennedy, or even his brother, Robert. I mean, yes, we are told that it was Sirhan Sirhan and Lee Harvey Oswald, but the fact that no one buys it, even to this day, tells you there's definitely a mystery there. But this video is not really about the Kennedy assassination. No, this mystery is about what happened recently in Russia. Namely in this shopping center just outside of Moscow. Yeah, they call it I can't pronounce the Russian name, the something city hall. Even though I think it's just a phrase. I think it wasn't an actual city hall as you and I would know it here in America. I think it was just a large shopping mall with a what they call an auditorium center in the middle of it. But of course, if you've been paying attention to the regular news or even alternative news sites, you already know what probably happened. And just like with 9/11, the people in Moscow are pretty hopping mad. Problem is, they don't really know who did it. Because if you talk to the Ruskies, they'll say, we think it's Ukraine. And of course, if you talk to people on the outside, such as the Americans, they say, oh, it was ISIS Khorasan. And then at that point you say, who the hell is that? Yeah, well, you could say it's almost like a phantom. Because the Americans, I've mentioned these guys before. Indeed, I remember the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Remember how all those American soldiers who got killed? and the Americans accused ISIS Khorasan of that. Problem is, they never actually produced any evidence that these people even exist. And of course, some of you are saying right now, but ISIS does exist. Well, it did exist. I mean, yeah, ISIS did exist briefly in Syria and in Iraq, but anyone who's paying attention knows those guys are around them where they all got blown up. Even Baghdad Ghani got, let's just say, he got what he deserved too. But the funny thing is, this ISIS Khorasan group, no one could actually point to any of them to say, oh, this person's a member. Because anyone who remembers Al-Qaeda remembers bin Laden, Zawahiri, even Al-Qaeda in Iraq. People were able to point to the head of that outfit and say, oh yeah, this guy, he's the head of Al-Qaeda in Iraq. But this ISIS Khorasan, nothing. Faceless, nameless, just a total phantom, a total mystery. Does it mean they exist? Maybe they do. Then again, maybe they don't. But the fact that this is supposedly, as far as the Americans are concerned, the second mass casualty event contributed to them, they seem to be the modern equivalent of a boogeyman. Remember Kaiser Sose from The Usual Suspects? Yeah, precisely. The boogeyman. A fairy tale you tell little kids to scare them. You know, tell them you better eat your vegetables, otherwise Kaiser Sose will come get you. Yeah. Which probably explains why the Ruskies don't believe it. They probably see ISIS Khorasan as a phantom, a boogeyman, an invention. Yeah. And indeed, anyone who remembers the Star Wars prequel films, yeah, I know some of you don't like the prequel films. Hey, I get it, I know. But that was the main subplot of that stuff. Was the damn Trade Federation was basically a phantom, a cutout for the Sith Lords. So there you go. And that probably explains why the attitude of the Ruskies, how the Americans and even the people in Ukraine initially said, hey, it wasn't us. And the Russians, they don't believe it. And yeah, I agree. It's too convenient. It's too pat. Now I'm going to show you a brief snippet of a video by Dr. Steve Turley. And smart guy, even though he's a former college professor. I know some of you people hate college professors, you think they're all woke, but not this guy. No. He's definitely anti-woke. But anyway, he has a little insight into the mess. Okay, you ready? Here we go.
Russia is officially at war. Over the weekend, 4 gunmen in camo entered one of the main concert halls in Moscow during a concert with thousands in attendance and subsequently began gunning down hundreds and then set off explosives that burned the building to the ground. As of the making of this video, the death toll has risen upwards of 137, with hundreds more injured. It was, without question, a shockingly horrifying terrorist act. All 4 of the alleged perpetrators have all been captured by authorities. The 4 men are all purportedly from Tajikistan, and they've been paraded before cameras for all the world to see basically how Russia deals with terrorists. They've clearly been tortured, and they obviously, their fate has been predetermined. An emotional President Putin was filmed lighting a candle and offering prayers in an Orthodox chapel on behalf of the victims of the terrorist attack, and he has vowed to the nation that there will be swift and decisive retribution against the perpetrators of this horror. And that is where Ukraine comes in.
We will be investigating this terrorist attack, and we already have some results. All the 4 perpetrators were directly involved, who were gunning people down, killing people. They were found and apprehended. They tried to escape. They were moving towards the border with Ukraine. And we have data that suggests that they were about to be moved towards the territory of Ukraine by those in Ukraine. Our military services, our emergency services, our investigators are working on finding out the orchestrators of this terrorist attack, those who gave them transportation, who who gave them weapons, etc.
So you don't have to be a genius to translate that. Putin is already blaming Ukraine for the attack. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has announced that for the first time, Russia is officially declaring war on Ukraine in response to what they believe to be Ukraine's support and perhaps even orchestration of the attack. Peskov said explicitly, quote, Russia cannot allow the existence on its borders of a state that has a documented intention to use any methods to take Crimea away from it, not to mention the territory of new regions. Again, the translation there is that Russia is going to respond with the intention of utterly crippling Ukraine, or perhaps more accurately, what's left of Ukraine. Now, this threat comes as France and Poland have announced that they are sending or intending to send several thousand troops to Ukraine to help with the fight, which, of course, Russia sees as a de facto NATO force inside Ukraine. Now, just to be clear, the sending of those forces is voluntary on the part of France and Poland and would not trigger Article 5 of NATO, which states that an attack on one member nation is an attack on all. But it does indicate an escalation for sure. NATO nations like France and Poland, by default the United States, are doubling down on this Ukraine insanity that has, as Tucker Carlson and others have repeatedly pointed out, it has no possibility whatsoever of ending in Ukraine's favor. None. And that's especially the case following this horrific attack on Moscow. Now, I'm going to show you exactly what we can expect to come from all of this. Now, as far as the plausibility of blaming Ukraine in this, we do have to remember, as far as the Russian population is concerned, this would not be the first time Ukrainian influences engaged in terrorist attacks on Russian soil. You all may remember the horrible killing of Darya Dugina, the daughter of Russian philosopher Alexander Dugin, in a car explosion back in August of 2022. Even U.S. officials admitted that Ukrainians were behind that attack. So the Russian population, frankly, needs no convincing. Again, for right or for wrong, they need no convincing that this latest attack was indeed orchestrated, ultimately at least, by the Ukrainians. And so what that means, as geopolitical analyst Pepe Escobar points out, is that as far as Russian officials are concerned, the real war starts now. I mean, remember, up to this point, Putin has been very reserved in this military operation. That's technically what it's been termed, a special military operation. Russian forces, in many respects, have been fighting with one hand tied behind their backs. This has been really the only way to keep China and India and Turkey on their side. But now all bets are off. This is why U.S. officials are claiming that the concert attack was actually a false flag orchestrated by Russian officials to justify transforming the SMO into a total war against Ukraine. But obviously those accusations fall radically short on the Russian population. And that's vitally important for us to understand here. The cat's out of the bag. There's no putting it back here. Russian forces are going to launch a full-scale war on Ukraine as a result of this.
Okay, you saw that, right? Yeah. Now, even he doesn't buy the story that it was ISIS. Now, of course, as you know, the scumbags who did this, most of them were caught. Even though, according to the Ruskies, 2 of the guys got killed. But hey, it happens. And of course, anyone who remembers the mess that happened in Paris back, I think it was in 2015, when ISIS, the OG ISIS, attacked all those places in Paris and killed all those people. Now, did those people drop their guns and just simply run away when the killing was over? Or did they just stand and fight to the last man? To where the damn French police and the French army had to go in there and get those guys. Yeah, precisely. And the fact that these clowns who did this mess in Moscow dropped their weapons and fled, and wait for it, they fled to the Ukrainian border, even though they claimed they were from Tajikistan, that's very suspicious. I mean, it's so suspicious you can't ignore it. And that's why this whole damn mess reminds me of a old school murder mystery, because indeed it is a murder. And anyone who remembers Agatha Christie's Murder on Orient Express remembers the climax. How Hercule Poirot, that little Belgian eavesdropper, had all the various suspects, and he concluded they all were involved because they all had a motive. And indeed, anyone who remembers the old tenets of any murder conspiracy knows that there's 3 main pieces: means, motive, and opportunity. Now the usual suspects, and I'm not using that to be cute, would be the United States and Ukraine. And then you say, why would they do something like that? Well, Ukraine has a bad history of doing terror attacks inside of Russia. I mean, like that Dovina woman, I think her name was. You know, her father was that philosopher Dugida. Yeah, she got blown up in his minivan. The bomb was meant for him, but she got behind the wheel. She got blown up instead. And then they had another incident in a cafe in St. Petersburg. Some Russian news reporter who was reporting on the mess in Ukraine. He was having a birthday party, and some woman walked in there a birthday gift. It wasn't a gift, it was a bomb. And she walked out of the damn cafe, and the bomb went off, killed the news reporter, and injured everyone in the cafe. And wait for it, the guy who was the news reporter for the TV station Russia One, some clown also working for Ukraine was caught red-handed trying to put a bomb underneath the man's car in the parking lot. But he got caught in the act because I guess he didn't realize the damn, I guess it was valet parking, and the parking attendant saw the guy, trying to put something in the man's car, and they said, hey, what are you doing there? And they called the police, and they found out the guy just stuck a bomb underneath the guy's car. And then finally, I don't know if you were paying attention, when old Tucker Carlson went to see the old, big bad voodoo daddy himself, Putin, some guy in the aftermath was arrested by the Russian security services after he supposedly was hired by the people in Ukraine again to put a bomb underneath Tucker Carlson's car. Which is kind of crazy because, as far as I know, Tucker Carlson was using the damn subway system to get around. But it is what it is. So yeah, when you look at the pattern that's been going on since all this mess has been going on between the Ukrainians and the Ruskies, you can't ignore it. The Ukrainians have a habit of staging terror attacks inside of Russia. So you can't, discount that they might be involved. And then, of course, there's the United States. And then you say the United States. Yeah. Because people tend to forget the United States also has a habit of using terrorism to get their way. Because people probably forget nowadays, but back during the Soviet invasion of Iraq, of Afghanistan, the Mujahideen was not an organic organization. I mean, yes, initially the Afghanis did resist the Soviet incursion until they didn't, but then the Mujahideen showed up. And of course, it came out long after that the Mujahideen was basically a cutout for the CIA. And wait for it, you ready? Who was a member of the Mujahideen? Osama bin Laden. Yeah. Because the CIA went to these radical Islamists, primarily in Saudi Arabia, which bin Laden's are from. They gave him money, and like a wind-up Energizer Bunny toy, they sent them off to Afghanistan to raise hell. And they did. And the Ruskies, packed up and left. But then, of course, we know afterwards, bin Laden informed Al-Qaeda and decided that the United States was the enemy. And he ended up getting 9/11. So there you go. Talk about blowback, as the CIA would say. But the thing is, apparently the United States didn't learn their lesson. Because the Syrian Civil War, man, talk about a Donnybrook and a half. Well, the thing is, during that mess was in full swing, ISIS made an appearance. And of course, people say, oh yeah, ISIS, those guys, real bad news. Yeah, they are. But then it came out afterwards that the CIA was providing them with resources, surreptitiously, of course, by way of Saudi Arabia again. Yeah, remember Prince Bandar? Yeah. He was formerly the Saudi ambassador to the United States back when George W. was president. Yeah, well, when the Syrian Civil War kicked off, guess what? Yeah, he was the head of Saudi intelligence. And he was basically the go-to guy between the CIA and ISIS. But then, of course, things went sideways in the damn Syria, and he lost his job. So there you go. But the thing is, it came out that the United States was basically working with ISIS. Why? Because they were attacking the Syrian government. And then you say, why? Because Syrian government was allied with Iran. And we know how much the Americans love the Iranians. Yeah, they don't. So there you go. And when you look at that history, and then you say, would the Americans actually would partner up with ISIS to get back at the Ruskies? What do you think? Yeah. Therefore, just like an old Agatha Christie story, you could say that all the various suspects, the damn the CIA, the damn Ukrainians, that guy, I think his name is Dulanov. He's the head of the SBU, basically the secret police in Ukraine. And then, of course, the remnants of ISIS. Yeah, there's still some of them actually are floating around. Not that many left, though. Just like Agatha Christie's Murder Express, you could say that, yeah, they probably were all in on it. Could you actually prove it in a court of law? Yeah, that's a big mountain to climb. So what happens next? Well, I think the Ruskies are going to be like really angry for a very long time. Will they actually track down who did it? I don't know. No one knows that for sure. I mean, they may track him down, like they did bin Laden, because remember, after he did 9/11, his life was on contract, and then of course, remember, about a decade later, SEAL Team 6 caught up with his dumb ass and gave him what he deserved. Yeah. And then again, this thing might end up like the Kennedy assassination. Oh, we'll have a boogeyman of a suspect, namely ISIS Khorasan, But just like with the Kennedy assassination, this mess in Russia might never ever be resolved to anyone's real satisfaction. Just saying. Well, that's what I have to say about that bloodletting in Russia. And that's my opinion.